What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Sarah, Quan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, and Kevin for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. Can you believe that? That's less than $1 an episode. And if you do that, you'll get some sweet, sweet perks for your support. And of course, if you think this show is worth sharing, then tell your mom and them about it. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out Beyond UX Design/support. So I've got an awesome interview today with my friend. We're friends now because we've been chatting for a while now about voiceover work and all this other stuff for a while. Stephanie Terrero. Is it Terrero? Terrero?
I mean, yeah, if you want to throw a little flavor on it, yeah. Exactly.
Stephanie Terrero. There you go. And we're going to talk all about her transition from acting into UX design and the overlaps there. So I'm really excited to talk about that. Stephanie's been helping me out too with some voiceover stuff. So after I got laid off, she was giving me some tips and some pointers, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you for that, by the way. So I'm really excited to talk to Stephanie today about her what she's learned over the last couple of years going from acting into UX. Well, there it is. All right. All right, so Stephanie is a Dominican award-winning multi-hyphenate artist from Washington Heights, New York City, and she carries her New York heart wherever she goes. With a rich decade-long career in entertainment, Stephanie has garnered international acclaim, securing Best Actress, Producer, and Director titles at numerous independent film festivals. Her work recognized at events like the HBO-sponsored official Latino Film and Arts Festival has earned her mentions on prominent entertainment, and she successfully pivoted into UX design in just under a year by landing short-term contracts, completing hackathons, and landing a coveted spot in a competitive full-time internship. And before her current role as a UX designer, she freelanced in no-code web and visual design for over 4 years. Her journey includes stellar achievements like acceptance in IBM's prestigious Accelerate program, where she excelled, placing her cohort in the top 7.4% nationwide and having her work noticed by Dribbble in the 2022 Daily UI Challenge. So, Stephanie, you have done quite a bit for someone so relatively new to UX design. Welcome to Beyond UX. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going?
It's good. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. You're my favorite podcast thus far, and that's big coming from me because I'm a podcast person.
Get out. So I'm like the best by default because you will listen to one.
Well, I mean, I tried listening to a few others, but they were a little too pretentious for my vibe. So you were more chill. Like, once I heard you say, "How's your mom and them?" I was like, "That's my guy."
Yeah, you're right. There you go. Oh, that's so funny. I was actually talking with somebody recently, which I guess Washington Heights. Where is that in New York? Is that
so? If you
Brooklyn?
Look at Manhattan, it's like an aisle, so it's right at the tippy top, like right before the Bronx. So if you're on the A train, for all my New Yorkers listening, it takes like an hour and some change to get anywhere else in the city. So I'm at the tippy top of Manhattan. That's where I'm from.
Oh, that's way far up. So you're just that's cool. Yeah, I was actually talking with Yadi actually recently, and she was making fun of my accent, and I sent her this thing about like the connection between New York and New Orleans and the Italians and like how we all kind of evolved. Our accents are very similar. And I had this funny story about like being on the subway and like hearing some like old ladies talking, and I was like, they sound like they're from New Orleans. But anyway, they were like from like Brooklyn or something. But anyway, all right. So it's awesome to have you on. So tell us a little bit about you. You've got a really awesome story, a lot of stuff you've done in the last couple of years as far as UX goes. Tell us a little bit about you. How'd you get into UX? And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I've had many titles throughout my career. I mean, actor first and foremost. And so when you're an actor, you work in any and every industry until you find something that's like, it fits, it's flexible. And so I want to say circa late 2018, early 2019, I ended up joining a boutique studio and working on the kind of front desk fitness side of things, like kind of being a studio manager. Then COVID happened. And then that evolved into kind of managing classes virtually. Then that evolved into social media management. Then that evolved into like creating graphics for the social media pages. Then that evolved into using Squarespace to make websites. I was like, oh my God, this is fun. I like doing this. Became a Canva queen. love Canva. And then that slowly evolved into just kind of doing that freelance. And so when my actor friends saw my website, they were like, "Oh my God, like, can you make my website?" I was like, "I did it on Squarespace for sure." So I did my actor friends' websites, and then that kind of just evolved like through word of mouth. And then recently, during that time period, they were like, "Oh, what you're doing is UX," and I was like, "Huh? What is UX? What is that?" And once I fell down that rabbit hole, because UX is a rabbit hole, I fell
Hmm.
down that,
Oh
and then I
yeah.
was like, "Oh my God, this is great! This is cool! Like, how to get started? What do like? I want to get into this." And then
Yeah.
slowly,
Ah,
that
that's
kind of
awesome.
led into like doing a hackathon, then using networking sites like Fishbowl and Well Found to kind of find contract work, and then that snowballed into being on LinkedIn and like applying for jobs. Then I saw an internship opportunity, applied, I got it. Then Tony Mora on LinkedIn posted
Yeah.
about the IBM program. I was like, "Oh, I'll try. I'll shoot my shot. I'll apply. I probably won't get into it." Got into it to my surprise. I was like, "Oh my God." And then everything just kind
Wow.
of snowballed into that. And that's a long-winded answer of how I got into
No, I love
UX.
that. Yeah, well, that's awesome, and that's a pretty prestigious thing too. The Accelerate program. So that's awesome. That's fantastic. So I wanna talk a little bit about that transition,
Mhm.
and what I really am interested in is like kind of digging a lot into the path that you ended up taking ultimately. The self
Yeah.
taught versus boot camp. We got some stuff we're gonna talk about there.
Hmm.
Um, and then ultimately like what you have learned and you wish you kind of knew going into this that might have been like completely different than what you expected. So I'm really excited to talk about
Seriously.
that. So let's talk all about your UX education. You're completely self-taught. If I'm not mistaken, you did not go to a boot camp. I want to talk a little bit about that
Mhm.
experience for you and maybe how you came to that decision, doing one over the other. And
Yeah.
now obviously this is a personal decision. It's what's different, or what happened for you is probably different for somebody else. But I
Right.
still think it's interesting to kind of dig into that. So
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about that. How'd you decide what route to go when it came to
Yeah, like
education?
the first thing I did was I went on Google Schmoogle and I typed in, UX classes, and the first thing that popped up was Google's Coursera UX
Hmm.
course, and then I read the very mixed reviews on it, and I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know if I should do it. So I bit the bullet, and I only completed the first module, so I'm a Coursera dropout. I never finished it.
So that might be a badge of honors for some people.
Right? So I did the first module, and then I was reading things online because I'm very research focused. Like whenever I get an audition, I'm researching who the producers are, who the company is, what the role is. Like I'm used to that already. So with UX, I treated it the same, and I'm like, okay, well, what are the seniors doing? So I typed in senior UX designer, and a whole bunch of like articles came up, and I was reading, and I was like, oh, well, maybe doing a boot camp is not the best idea. But then
Mm.
I fall for marketing, so a lot of these boot camps, like, oh, well, maybe
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should sign up and do the thing. It looks cool. So I thought about it, but then I was like, no, like boot camps are really expensive. They're like 5 to 10 to 20K, and I was like, I
It's a
cannot
lot. Yeah.
drop those coins right now. So I ended up just doing the freelance or self-taught route. And so I was like, okay, I only have like this very basic foundational knowledge, but let me see if I can find something super entry level. Tell them, I don't know diddly squat. Can you please like show me and teach me? And that was how I got my first contract role as a UI designer. And it was
Hmm.
very much startup, wearing multiple hats and really just figuring it out as we went along. Like we were all new to UX in general, so we were all kind of teaming up together. Like, how do you do this? I don't know. Let me figure it out. Like,
Yeah. Okay. So you
yeah.
were with a team of people. It wasn't just you alone. You had
Right.
multiple
Thank
designers
God it
all
wasn't just me
working
alone. It was a
together.
team of people, so we were able to bounce off of each other and like Slack each other. Like, oh, I read this article. Like, it says that you should do your spacing like this. Like, oh, okay. So we were just learning everything from the ground up. So it was nice to have someone to bounce off of.
Yeah. No, I love that. So, you feel like that kind of learning as you go, obviously it worked. I mean, you're doing it now. You have a job now. You're successful now. But I'm curious, like learning it that way,
Mhm.
like maybe some pitfalls, something that like you realize, like going back, would you tell yourself to do that same thing again, or
I
would
think
you
if I had to start
try to
over
do something
again,
different?
I would probably reach out to more seniors and say like, "Hi, like I see, you're a senior designer at Google. Like I'm interested in getting into it. Like what's your story? How did you start? Like what do you recommend?" Versus just like blindly diving in and trying to figure it out as you go along, which it works in the beginning, but then at a certain point I
Hmm.
felt like, okay, I need a mentor. I need someone to tell me like you don't need to do this specific thing, you can do that thing. Like there's it's very subjective. So there's a lot of decisions you can do with your frames and your designs and everything. So I feel like I wish I had someone to kind of say like, you don't need to throw the kitchen sink at it. You can scale back. And then I feel like my early designs were very cluttered versus now they're
Mm,
way scaled back and a little more minimalistic. So I think if I had someone kind of helping guide that, it's like, okay, I kind of wish I had that. So I don't always advocate to be the self-taught route, but for some, hey, it works. And for others, you need a little bit of that guidance, like a teacher. So I wish I had that fine balance of like learning on my own, but also having a teacher to kind of say, well, like, I know you learned that, but like industry practices X, Y, Z.
yeah. Do you feel like if you went back in time, would you go the same route, not boot camp? I'm assuming you had the money. Let's assume you had
Assuming I
money.
had the money.
Would you do it again, or do you feel like you got everything you needed that sort of self-taught route?
I feel like I got everything I needed, and I only say that because boot camps get heavily poo-pooed on. So I think if I would have invested the money into a boot camp and then finding out later, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. So I don't know. I like to hear what other
Yeah.
people say, and I've been on Reddit. I've seen what people say, like, I went to this boot camp, I remember, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I made the right
Hmm.
choice by not going to this specific school or what have you. And then that's not to knock anyone who's done it. I work with people who have done boot camps and they've said fabulous things about it. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like it worked out for
Hmm.
you. You got a job out of it, like all these things. That's awesome. But I know it's very, very mixed for some people.
Yeah, I've interviewed a lot of people who have done boot camps, seniors and people who
Hmm.
did them years ago. I feel like it's a very specific thing to your context because
Hmm.
whatever the curriculum happened to be at that specific boot camp, the
Right.
mentor that you were assigned, the teacher that you were assigned,
Yeah.
the time and place in the market. I mean, even
Right.
changes.
How everything was
Their stuff
going.
changes so
Yeah.
fast. So
Hiring practices
yeah,
at the time, all that.
exactly. Yeah. So there, I'm just curious, like from you personally,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, this is obviously like a personal issue. A lot of people like the hands-on stuff. A lot of people like being able to learn as they go. Some people like the more structured approach to, curriculums and things like that. But I'm just curious. That's awesome. I'd love to hear it. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about the hackathons. This is something interesting. I
Yeah,
don't
for
hear a lot of
sure.
people on the UX side, at least, talking about hackathons. Maybe it's just the circle I run in, but I'm
Yeah,
curious,
for
like the
sure.
hackathons. Tell me a little bit about your experience there and how you feel like that helped you out get to where
Sure,
you're
yeah.
you're at now.
So, as we all know, our phones listen to us. So I know 100%
Do they?
once I said I wanted to do UX, I instantly started getting targeted ads. So I
Oh,
was
that's freaking
scrolling,
crazy.
yeah, I
That's
was scrolling
terrifying.
through Instagram and I saw from this boot camp, they had posted like, oh, like we're doing a free hackathon for people who have zero experience. Like, come join, it'll be fun. You'll make something. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So like jumped in. The company was owned by women. I was like, I love that. And then I ended up connecting with a designer, Sarah. She's awesome. She was based in Boston at the time. And she had completed a boot camp through a university. So she was my lead. She was guiding me through the project. And I had a lot of fun with her. She was teaching me all the things that she learned and me just absorbing all of it. Our design was crap, but we had a lot of fun making it. And we
Hmm.
submitted it to the hackathon, didn't win anything because the prize was you could go to the boot camp for free. But we didn't win anything, but it was just fun to like team up with someone else and like learn Figma for the first time and like learn how to like maneuver in that and just like collaborate with someone that you don't know, but you slowly become friends with over 5 days because you're like cranking out so much work.
Yeah. So
Um,
was this
yeah.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't
No,
mean
no,
to
I was
interrupt.
gonna say, and then after that, I only did one more hackathon, and I was looking through LinkedIn and I saw Emil. I think I'm gonna butcher her last name, but you know who she is. She's got the glasses with the
Oh,
visors up.
Emily Masaryk. Yeah.
Yes, her. Yes, she's one of the top
Yeah,
voices.
yeah, yeah.
I found her page through. I think someone I was connected with had liked her content, and so then I snooped on her page, started stalking, followed her, and then she posted about, oh, like UX designers, you should do hackathons, and then she posted a link to this website called DevPost. So I went to DevPost. They had an Estee Lauder hackathon, and I was like, oh, I like makeup, like I like beauty, like I like that field. So then I did that hackathon, and that was really cool. But then I ended up going to the internships right after that. So I only ever did two hackathons, but they're a lot of work. So I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't think I would do another one again.
Do you feel like it helped you? I mean, the work that you did there,
Mhm.
did it help you like learn something, or was it like work you put in your portfolio that you were really proud of that you were able to kind of show off and talk
Yeah,
through during interviews, or
exactly.
like
That's
the benefits, I
exactly.
guess? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
cool.
the two benefits. So I was able to turn both of those projects into case studies. And I really
Hmm.
spoke about like my process, like learning, like what we did, refining the designs. The second hackathon I did was more focused on accessibility in the beauty space. And I thought it would make for a really interesting case study. So when I was interviewing for my internship, I mentioned it, they saw it, they really liked it. So I think that case study probably helped me in my case to get hired on as an intern. So doing hackathons is fun. Like make your case studies and then you can use that in your portfolio to help, get you interviews until you get your first like real client thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you also? I think you did some contract work before you ended up
Mhm.
getting the job. Was this before or after you did
It was
the
simultaneously
internships?
because I'm always
Okay.
doing the most. I'm literally queen of doing the most. So it was simultaneously while I was doing that. A friend of mine at the time told me about this app called Fishbowl, and popular networking app for those of you who haven't heard, anonymous, but someone had posted like, oh, like I'm doing a user survey, trying to collect feedback, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh well, I'm a UX designer, so I DM'd them like, hi, like I'm in UX and like I would love to help you guys out. And to my surprise, they responded. They were like, "Oh yeah, sure. Like we're actually looking for a user researcher. Like, do you want to do like a 2 month contract?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I would love that." And then that kind of just snowballed into that. So that was really cool to do the user research side of things. And they knew that I didn't know anything, so they were really helpful in like teaching me and showing me the ropes.
So did they have a team that you were working with as
It
well,
was
or were
just
you
me and
just
the
like the
co-founder.
only? Okay, but did
Yeah,
they know what they were doing, or how did that work? Was it
yeah. So the
like he had done it
co-founder,
before, he or she?
right,
Okay,
right. The co-founder, he knew what he was in before. Like he had done it prior.
okay.
He had made a few startups before, so this was just another startup, and I believe he's still working on it. And at the time, he was like, "Oh yeah, like I've done this before. I can walk you through the process." And so I did learn a lot about the user research side through him. And he's based in Canada, so if I ever go again to Canada, I'll hit him up like, "Hi, I'm here. Like I'm in Canada. Like we should
Right
meet up
on.
for lunch." Like yeah,
Hell yeah, yeah. You're like startup founder. You got the money. Let's go somewhere nice.
right,
That's what you just use that VC funding, baby.
right.
All right. Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. So Fishbowl, actually, I don't know anything about Fishbowl. I've never heard of it. So it's like this isn't like a contract site where you just happen to find people and then they were like, hey, here's a thing.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
Fishbowl's an app where, not for nothing, it's like, depending on what bowl you're in. So there are bowls for different topics. So there's topics for like job referrals, salary negotiation, like design, like whatever field you're in,
Okay.
it has a bowl and you're only known by your username. So like you would be like, senior designer one. And then you could post on it and you can either talk smack or you could be like, hey guys, like, I'm working on my portfolio. I would love some feedback. Like, what do you guys think? Or like, oh, I'm interviewing at Microsoft. Like, I'm in the final round. What do you guys expect? Like, you just like an open forum, very
Mm-hmm.
much Reddit style, basically.
Right on. I've never heard of Fishbowl. All right,
Yeah,
I'm gonna check that out.
yeah,
That's
check it
kind
out.
of cool. Then you found some cool stuff there. I love that.
Hmm.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the IBM internship program. It seems
Hmm.
like this kind of like really like jump started your career. I feel like that's like a great thing to have on your resume,
For sure, yeah.
especially as a junior designer going to interview at places. This
Hmm.
seems like a huge thing. Tell me a little bit about that whole process for those not aware. Like, how'd
Yeah.
you find out about it? How'd you get it? And then let's talk a little bit about like what it was actually like.
Yeah, for sure. So I was lurking through LinkedIn per usual. That is my MO. I'm a serial LinkedIn lurker and I will die on this hill. And someone I was connected to, I wish I could remember who, but they had liked Tony Mora's post. And I saw like, oh, like he's a, IBM Federal Garage lead, like he's a big voice. So I
Hmm.
started following him. And then he posted like, hey, like IBM's got this internship program for college students. And at the time, I was not a college student. I did not have a college degree. And I said, you know what? I'm going to sign up and get like my associates. So I enrolled in my associates program. And so then I qualified for the internship. So I applied, filled out the application, and then there was like a mini essay section. And I just wrote about like the 2 hackathons I did. And like that's all the experience I had. And then I shared my portfolio. That's all I had. And I figured I'm not going to hear anything. This is IBM. Like, I'm literally nobody. Like, I'm not going to hear anything. And to my surprise, a few months later, I got an email saying, like, hi, Stephanie, like, you've been accepted into our program. I was like, oh, excuse me, like me? Like, okay. I was very
That's
shocked.
awesome.
But yeah, the program was really a lot of fun. It was about 8 weeks and we learned from every department on like service design, UX design, the history of
Mm.
design, like just so many design oriented topics. Dark patterns in UX, when design with physical things can be violent. Just we learned so many topics and started so many conversations that I felt like we could lecture for hours and hours and hours just listening about every topic under the sun.
That's cool. So it was like sort of a mix between work and classes or
It was more
I
it
don't want
was
to call
more
it
so
classes, but
like right, it was more so like you had homework assignments that you would do for your own personal research, so to kind of grow your knowledge, but it was more lecture based. So you would sit there, listen to
oh wow,
lectures,
okay.
and then you would get take home assignments. But then at the end, you had to kind of present everything that you had learned over the 2 weeks, so or over the 2 months. So I created like a little mind map where I put like I think like design thinking or something in the middle, and then I put like these little spider webs coming out and just like listed
Hmm.
all the things I had learned in like this cool like brain map situation. And then I presented that to my little group, and people liked it, which was nice. And then IBM included it in their little like social media shout out thing, which
Oh
I thought
wow,
was pretty cool. Yeah. And I made a lot
right
of
on.
great connections. Like if you look through my connections list, there's a lot of IBM people I'm connected to.
That's all
We
right.
made a lot of
It's good.
connections. Yeah.
Good company to be connected to. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Did
For
you
sure.
anything in there you like kind of like aha moments or things that you're just like, oh God, I wish more people knew about this stuff.
Yeah, for me, I think, and this is more one of the heavier topics, we spoke about how, for police officers, how guns specifically, between guns and tasers, how the
Hmm.
claim that they look the same when being drawn, and how could design fix that and change that, and how can you make it a different shape so that that confusion
Wow.
is
Okay.
not something that happens. So like that was one of the heavier weeks, but it really had me thinking like wow, like you actually can design a bad physical product that can be dangerous. And so how do you
Hmm.
apply that to digital products as well? So that kind of got the brain flowing with like dark patterns and making sure that you don't do anything deceptive to your user. So that was something that I still think about to this day. I probably never forget that lecture. I'll think about it forever, literally.
Oh yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's such an interesting thing to think about too. I think
Mhm.
like as designers, we always product designers, which is ironic because 10 years ago product designer meant something completely different.
Yeah.
But when we think about it, we think about UI design, we think about software design,
Mhm.
and very often, that those physical things around us, they need design, they need
Mhm.
that kind of thinking about design and how design is going to interact and stuff. So
Right. Yeah.
I
And I
love that.
feel
I love that
like
IBM's teaching that.
right, right. And I feel like ever since learning that, I started to look at everything different. And I was harassing my boyfriend so much. And he was like, oh, I wish this door would open up. I'm like, see, that's bad UX. And then we would get in the car, like, oh, I wish my car up. That's bad UX. So I harassed
Yeah.
him
Oh
for
yeah.
months, just pointing out all the bad things that we saw outside. Like, oh, well, that's bad UX. There's no sign that says the door's push or pull. So.
I do. Yeah, the Norman door. The
Yeah.
Norman door. Is that the Norman door? Yeah, the Norman door. I guess that's what. Anyway, I always think about that, like the Far Side comic with like the school for the gifted, and the kid is
Oh,
like
yeah.
pushing, and the sign says pull. Anyway, Far Side. Love me some Far Side. All right, cool. So you ended up getting a job. You're working full time now. I don't know if you
Mhm.
want to talk about your current job, but all the stuff that you've kind of learned. I'm curious, like talking about your experience over the last year. How long have you been had like your full time job now? 2 years? 1 year? A
A
year and a half?
little under a year, because I started in
Okay.
June, was converted over in August, so this June would make a year. But if we count when I was converted over, then this August would make a year. So professionally, a little under a year. But if you count me scrappy, like researching things, and like probably count 2022, so like almost 2 years
Yeah,
now.
count it.
We'll count
Right
that. So
on. Okay,
almost two
cool.
years.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about like these things, and then I want to talk about like your background in acting and how that has kind of helped prepare you,
Mhm.
because I feel like there's a lot of crossover there as far as
Mhm.
like things. I don't know. I got some interesting questions I want to ask you in a minute,
Yeah,
but
for
I want
sure.
to talk about like stuff from the last year, things that you like thinking back, like a year ago. I wish I had known this. Something that you could tell like your younger Stephanie. Like I wish you need to do these things. What are some of those things?
Oof. Like I said, mentorship. I would tell myself to definitely seek mentorship. I would tell myself to slow down. I think my entire life, and maybe it's just a New York hustle. I move fast, I talk fast, I do everything fast. I don't know when to slow things down. So I think learning to tell my younger self, like, you don't need to master UX in 2 months. Like, calm down. Like, you can start one at a time, like, start with the foundations of web design and mobile and like all that stuff. Just like learn everything one step at a time. Don't try to just jam pack everything into your brain so that when you're in an interview and they're like, "Oh, do you know how to do this?" You're like, "Yeah, yeah, I can do everything. I can do everything." Like, you
Hmm.
cannot do everything. Relax. Like, take it
Hmm.
one day at a time because it takes years to master UX, and there's no way you can do it in 2 months. even if you're like mega superstar in every other aspect. There's no way. So definitely slow down and relax is what I would tell myself because I'm always doing the most.
Yeah. I'm curious what you learned in the real world doing real
Yeah.
actual work
Mm-hmm.
versus all the stuff you learned up until then. Although I guess like
Exactly.
you did some contract work, so that's kind of real world stuff, I guess. Like I would
Right.
count that.
Well, no, definitely.
Um
Like I understand that. Um,
yeah. So like real world stuff, like anything you like kind of didn't expect going
mm,
into this that you like, but that's not how I learned it or that's not what they said. And stuff that was just like totally different that
yes.
you
Oh
didn't
my
expect.
God. 100%. So I work in an agency and I've never worked in an agency a day in my life. So when you work at an agency, depending on how they operate, a lot of the departments are separated. So I come from a background where I was doing the user research, I was doing the wireframes, I was doing the colors, I was doing, from zero to
Mhm.
finish. And when you work at an agency, you don't do from zero to finish. You don't always have
Yeah.
time for user research. Sometimes you have to jump straight to wireframing and then you have to present to a client and then go back. And so a lot of the process is very not backwards, but it's not like a linear path. It's not like you do steps 1
Right.
through 10 and then you're done. Sometimes you start at step 10 and work your way backwards to step 1, which might sound counterintuitive, but that's how it is in the real world. And so sometimes you have to grapple with the fact that your design will get passed on to someone else. It'll change. It'll go through
Yeah.
iterations. You might not be happy with the direction that it's going, but like that's what the team has decided. So it needs to move forward in that direction. You'll get a lot of questions like, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Sometimes you'll say, I don't know why I did it. I just did it. And so then learning to actually have an answer as to
I love that. Yeah, that's some really good advice. Yeah, that's something I feel like a lot of junior designers, graphic designers, visual designers, even whatever, like I like this, I like that. And you're like, no, it doesn't matter. We're not here because you like something. So this isn't art. Cool. No, I love that. I'm glad you found those things. That's really fascinating stuff. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about your experience as an actor and those transferable skills. And I feel like when we talk about UX design, they're obviously very different jobs, they're very different skill sets, but I feel like there's a lot of overlap. All right, so I want to talk about your transition
Mhm,
from UX and all those transferable skills. Obviously, these are different jobs, but I feel like there's a
mhm.
lot of stuff. What has acting helped you, or sorry,
I was hacking.
how has acting helped you
Yeah.
become a better UX designer? Do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing I didn't know about this job is the amount of public speaking that you need to do. Like,
Mm,
I didn't know it involved so much presentations, client presentations, internal reviews, stakeholder reviews, like so much of presenting your work to so many people. You're constantly talking all the time, always. So I think being an actor kind of
hmm
helped me with that because it's something I'm comfortable with. Like I'm totally fine talking to a bunch of people, a room of people. And I think kind of I know you spoke about this with Yadi, but having kind of an improv background, I know how to roll with the
hmm
punches and kind of just, let things flow as they may. I'm not camera shy, so that also helps as well. So I have no issue with going up on a stage and being like, yeah, so here's what I'm presenting. Now I will get nervous if I'm like, I know I did this project. I know what I'm doing, but God, like this is for this huge client. Like, what the heck am I gonna say? Like, how do I
Yeah.
sound smart? Like, sometimes that will run through my head because I'm thinking like, put on UX hat, how to sound UXy. But if I'm
How to sound
putting
UXy,
on,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, how to sound UXy. But if I'm putting on my actor hat, then I don't have those feelings because that is my domain and I know what I'm doing. UX is not my
Mm,
domain. I don't know everything that I'm doing. I'm still actively learning and growing. So I think definitely storytelling is a good overlapping skill. So I know how to
mm.
tell a story physically. So now just learning how to tell that story orally through design and everything, if that hodgepodge makes sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm curious, like, because when you think about actors, you think about putting on different masks and playing different roles and
Mm-hmm.
playing things you are not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, you mentioned that you were nervous, like, in putting your UX hat on. I think is that what I don't remember what you said.
Yeah, I said UXC.
But yeah, there you go. Like putting your your UXy hat on. How I'm curious, like, is that something you feel like there's still a level of it's different than playing a role
Oh, a
because you
thousand
aren't
percent.
actually that person. You have a script and you have a director and all that stuff. But is there like is there an interplay there between sort of like actors playing roles
Mm-hmm.
and maybe being nervous but not showing it? I don't know if that's like
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that actors have to worry about? I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So basically, when you're an actor, you're reading a script and you're playing someone else. So your feelings, you can push them down and lock them away because it's not about you. It's about what the character wants, how the character is feeling, etc. But when you
Hmm.
are, in tech, sales, whatever your profession is, and you have to put on a presentation, you're not playing a role, you're you. So it's showing yourself to everyone and being
Mm.
knowledgeable and being a subject matter expert, especially if you're new. I talk on UX, I would freak out because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna do. Like, I would freak out and wouldn't know anything because it's like I'm not putting on a show, I'm being me and having to explain my process and my thoughts and all that stuff. So storytelling helps, but the nerves kick in when you're like, I don't feel like I know everything. I don't feel confident in this because if I got grilled with questions, I'd be like, Jeremy, can you answer this? I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's so funny. Yeah, that makes sense because, like, I guess when you're on stage and you're rehearsing and stuff and you
Yeah, you
practice a
get to
lot, but I
rehearse.
think there's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's something said about that though. I think there's a lot of designers that will just go into a presentation and wing it, and you've got to practice your stuff. I mean, especially
Mhm.
depending on the who you're presenting to. If it's just your team,
Right.
maybe you don't practice. But if you're presenting to the CEO or executives or some huge stakeholder or something that's like really
Hmm.
important, practice that freaking presentation. Like, map it out, record yourself, watch it back. Like, there is no reason why a UX designer should not be rehearsing
Hmm.
for a big sales type. We got to get this idea sold and we need money or
Exactly.
whatever it is. We want
Yeah.
buy-in from a stakeholder. Practice that,
Exactly. I'll
and
do you
it's
one better.
something people
Like
don't do.
my very first big presentation at the end of my internship, we had to present to everyone. And the clients' representatives were there because we were working on a project for a real brand. And the owner of the agency was there. So, like, all the bigwigs, they were all there. So, I decided to lean on my skill set and I wrote myself a script and I memorized
Yeah,
it and I presented it. And everyone was like, oh my God, you did great. I'm like, yeah. And I knew how to deliver it
yeah.
so it sounded organic. Because I know, like, on LinkedIn, you'll see, like, don't write a script, don't read off of a thing because you're going to sound robotic.
I
I'm
was
like,
gonna
not
say.
if you know what you're doing.
I
Like,
was gonna say, like, if you're an actor and that's what you do for a living, then
yes.
absolutely do that. But like most people, that's really interesting because I think most people, if they tried to write a script, they'd be like, "Today I am here to present this really important thing to you, the stakeholder."
Yeah.
So you're gonna sound like an idiot. But I think when you're an actor, though, I think that's something that
Yeah.
and that actually is an interesting thing because, like, if you feel like as a designer you have a hard time presenting your work,
Hmm.
maybe you should take some type of acting class or class where you speak, not just like public speaking, but well, maybe a public speaking class because I guess
Right.
there's a lot of overlap there. But
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I just
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
No,
thought of
yeah.
that. Is
Just
that
like,
something like you could? Do you have like any resources that like a UX designer that's looking to improve how they present,
yeah, for
like
sure.
some resources for them to find? That'd be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So depending on, what city you're in, if you're in, New York or LA, you have 1,000 acting classes that you can take. But if you're in the middle states, definitely, or internationally, like look for local acting studios and you can take like acting 101, you can take improv 101, you can take commercial classes just to learn how to be in your own body, how to own your voice, how to know that everyone's cheering for you, no one's against you, and to just like
Mm.
breathe, relax, kind of have fun with it so that way you can feel better speaking publicly. Now, I'm not saying you have to go speak to 2,000 people, but just at least if you can talk to one person and get it right where you need it to be, then you should be good in terms of client presentations. Because I started off scripted and then I slowly weaned it to bullet points. So now that's my preferred method. Like I write bullet points of what I want to talk about
Mm.
and then I wing it. And then if I get asked a question, I try to answer it. But if I don't, I always have a senior there that I can default to them because I'm like, I'm just a baby. I can throw the
Yeah.
questions to them and side skirt and dodge it.
Just hand it over. That's a really great question for my boss. There you go. I love that. I'm curious. Like, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of empathy, right?
Mhm.
And obviously, empathy. It's kind of a buzzword, but I feel
Yes.
like it's something that is important for us to understand
Hmm.
context. It's a vessel for us to what's the right word? Maybe not a vessel. It's
Yeah.
the activity that we use as designers to understand the context of
Hmm.
our users and what they're doing. And I'm curious, as an actor getting into a role, I guess there's different schools, like method acting is very different than other types of acting,
Right,
but
right.
getting into that role and understanding a character, are there some takeaways there for like designers that are looking to build empathy for users or stakeholders or their team or something.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
does that play?
Yeah,
What's
for
that like?
sure.
I'm
A
curious.
1000%. I think the way that those two things can overlap is essentially putting yourself in that person's shoes. So the minute you want to say, like, oh, this person's asking me, questions that are so obvious, it may be obvious to you, but it is not obvious to them. So take the time to put
Hmm.
yourself in their shoes. Not everyone knows everything. Everyone started from somewhere. When you started, even if you have 40 years experience, you started from zero. So you would have loved for someone to explain that to you. So just take the time to understand the other person's shoes, and then you can sympathize with them, and then you can empathize and say, okay, well, the reason why I want to do something like this is because XYZ. And if they're like, oh, well, I'm not understanding, okay, no problem. Let me break it down even further. And then just kind of
Hmm.
dive into that versus being very standoffish and like huffing and puffing, like, oh, this person will never understand. Like, they will understand. Just explain it, nicely with empathy, with respect, and all that fun stuff.
I love that. And I'm curious, like, are there methods that you would use as an actor to learn about a character or learn about that character situation or something? I don't know if you follow like method. I guess that's more like method acting. They'd be like live as that person for a year before they take the role or whatever. But I'm curious, like, are there like things that actors do to get into that role to really empathize with their character?
I think that depends. It's per individual actor. Like for me, I am not a method actor. I'm more of a Meisner actor. And Meisner is very much you are you in that moment. So every script that I get, it's me, but in that situation. Like, how would I react to that situation? That's how you get the most organic responses. So if I'm doing a scene where like my husband died, like I just put myself in those shoes and just imagine
Yeah.
like how would I react if my husband died right now? Like do that versus like I've seen this on a soap opera and I know it has to go like this and I know I have to do that. Like
Yeah.
don't try and mimic things that you've seen or your idea of what you think it should be. Just live in the moment. So I think when you're applying that to design, instead of thinking like, oh, I need to be this way, I've seen other people do things like this, like just put yourself in the situation. How would you react to it? How would you live that
Hmm.
experience?
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, and I think that's something like a lot of designers they tend to, and especially, it's hard to do this necessarily with users, I think, because you
Mm-hmm.
only get like maybe an hour with them and it's hard to talk to the same person multiple times, whatever. But especially when we talk about empathy
Mm-hmm.
for your users, that's one thing, but like empathy for your team, for the product managers, for the engineers, for the stakeholders, for
Mm-hmm.
all these people that you work with on a daily basis, like you can't do that if you don't talk to them
Exactly.
on a regular basis. So like,
Mm-hmm.
getting an understanding, like where are you coming from? Why? How do you think about this? Or like, what is your process? Or where do you stand on this thing or another thing? It's so hard for us to do that if we're not having those regular conversations with all those people we work with
Right.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I
And,
always try to do. Like if I'm
to your
going to
point.
start a new project, I will reach out to the project manager, to, content strategy, copywriter, art, what have you. And I'll be like, "Hi, like I'm Stephanie, like I'm new here. I wanted to kind of take 5 minutes to talk to you, get to know you. How's your process? Like, do you want to see my wireframes before I make them? Like after, like how do you want this whole process to go?" And normally everyone's super open. They're like, "Oh yeah, for sure. Like let's have a quick meeting." And then
Hmm.
5 minutes turns into like 30 because you're just talking about life before you get into like
Yep.
the actual nitty gritty of work and stuff. And I think that makes better cross collaboration, and it kind of makes everything go a lot better versus working in a silo and then just tossing things off. And people are like, I've never seen this. What is this? Who made this? And like,
Hmm.
bye, I'm off to the next thing. Like, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's. I love that you call that out, and I'm glad that like as a junior designer doing this for a year or more, like you've figured that out on your own because
Hmm.
so many people will just hop into a meeting, they'll skip the small talk, and they will just jump straight into the business and be like, "All right, let's not waste time. Here's my thing, ABC, blah blah blah." But there's so much value
Hmm.
in spending 5 minutes to just small talk and bullshit and ask about their day and
Exactly.
how's your weekend. Oh, your kids are sick. How are they doing? Oh, there's a fun thing this weekend. Oh, blah blah blah. Like that just goes so far. And so many people like forget that. And I know that's not necessarily anything to do with acting, but that is
It
something I think is
definitely
just
is
like
through
so
acting. Like
important.
I try to small talk. Like a lot of auditions are slowly going back to in person, but I still do them virtually. So
Hmm.
virtually, if I have even 60 seconds, whoever I'm with, I'm like, "Hi, how are you? How are you doing? How's your day going?" I know like you probably saw 100 people.
Hmm.
I just wanted to stop and say like, "Are you good? Like, how's it going? Did you drink water? Did you go to
Hmm.
the bathroom? Like,
Yeah.
you've been sitting for 8 hours. Did you get up and like stretch? Like, I can
Yeah.
wait, and then we can
Yeah.
go. Like, I just want to take a second to make sure you're
Yeah.
good. Like, we're all human. We're not robots. Like, I know AI is the buzzword, but we're all human right now. Like,
Right now, for a little while.
for a little
For a
while.
little while, at least. Yeah, we'll see.
Until we
Check,
evolve
check
into
back in 10 years.
cyborgs. No.
Watch out. All right, I don't like that talk. That's makes me nervous. All right, I got one more question. I'm really curious about this. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like for me, being a non-actor, auditions have got to be terrifying. But I'm curious, what's more nerve-wracking as an actor? Is it auditions, or is it like presenting your work during an interview and walking through like your case study during an interview? Like, which one is like really more nerve-wracking
Walking through a
from an actor's
case study
perspective?
in an interview.
Is it really?
Because as an actor, you walk into an audition, you do your audition, you'll get your readjustments or feedback, and then you leave, and that's that. You never have to think about it ever again. But with work, you have to present, and then you have to see those people again. So it's definitely more nerve-wracking to be like, okay, like I want this to go perfect and really good, and like I sound competent, and not just like throw a hot pot mess, and then later they're like, well, who hired her? Like just keeping
Mm-hmm.
it like normal so you sound like you know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah. So, okay. So in auditions, do you get feedback? Like someone will be like, "We didn't like that you did
Not
this," or "We didn't
always.
like how you said blah blah blah."
Not always.
No. Okay.
Sometimes it's very vague. Like you'll walk in, you'll do it, and then you have literally 3 seconds by their face, and they're just like, "Thank you." And then you can either say to yourself, like, that was a bad thank you, or that was like a good, but sometimes they're very like, thank you. And you're like, fuck. And then other times you'll get like, thank you so much. That's all we need. You're like, okay, better. It was a better
Uh
tone.
huh.
Like, all right. And then you leave.
No, that's funny. Yeah, because like as somebody who's been doing job interviews recently,
Mhm.
getting zero feedback has been like infuriating. Like zero. It's like, oh, well, what happened, or why did you like? Anyway, it's
Right.
something like that happens just so often right now, especially like I think like recruiters
Yeah.
are overwhelmed. They're
Mhm.
not used to the hundreds of people coming in like they are
Right.
someone doing an audition.
Right. Which is a
What would you
good
call
thing
that
because
person?
I'm
An audition manager? What do you call that role?
a person who auditions a lot.
An audition, the person doing the auditioning, like
Oh,
sitting on the
so
other
you
end
have
of
the
on the
casting
side.
director, their casting assistant,
Casting
who
director.
will
Okay.
read for
Okay.
you. So there's like a whole bunch of roles. Sometimes the client will sit in on the audition. So it really
Okay.
depends.
So
But yeah.
they're used to like hundreds of people coming in for a thing. And I think like now, like these recruiters are not used to that at all. Like
Hmm.
thousands of people for one job, hundreds of people for one job. And I think they're
Exactly.
like super overwhelmed. So they're like ghosting people and they're not replying. And
I know.
anyway,
And the good
this is
thing
like
is
a common
like
thing now, but
right, like the good thing is I'm used to rejection. I'm used to never hearing feedback. So when I first started applying, I wasn't hearing anything. I'm like typical. Like tell me what else
yeah,
is
what's
new.
what's new? So that's another thing you take away is just the experience with rejection. It's
Exactly, exactly.
a great takeaway from acting. All right, I love that. So I'm curious, just any other advice? We've been talking for a little bit. We got some questions I want to ask you before we do that. Any other advice that you have for those junior designers that are coming up? That things that you've learned, takeaways for them, stuff you wish you knew back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Fake it till you make
Well,
it,
I
which
sort of
might
asked you that
be
already, but
controversial. So like steal like an
okay.
artist. I don't know. So for
Hmm.
me, I if I was gonna give advice to junior designers, I would say look at a lot of senior portfolios and see how they do it, especially the ones that are publicly available. Like I said, I'm a LinkedIn lurker queen. So I have seen many, many, many senior designer portfolios. So I modeled a lot of my case studies after what I saw. And I think that also helped break the mold because I think a lot of juniors are being taught to do case studies in a specific format in a specific way.
Mm.
And then it all blends together and it doesn't stand out. And so looking at what seniors do, they do it differently. So I'm like, Jeremy does like that. I'm doing it like that. Oh, see, I'm getting noticed in a higher level, even though I'm not there yet. But it's just the illusion
Mm.
of seeming like
Okay, so when you say
I'm
fake it
there.
till you make it,
Mhm.
you're not saying pretend like you can do the work. You're
Right. No, no.
saying
Yeah.
take a look at how the other people are doing it
Right.
and mimic that and mold that,
Basically,
which I
look at,
think is
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's like
Looking at it, yeah.
excellent advice because this is something I see so many junior designers doing all the time, and it blows my mind. They want to be new and novel and original. And so they'll make something that is absolutely awful, but it's new and it's novel and it's original. And we're like, yeah, well, you got those three things right. It's definitely new.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
look at what other people are doing. And, even this goes beyond just portfolios, resumes. I mean, even like interfaces, like, Apple, Google, whoever, they lay these things out for a reason. They add spacing the way they do for a reason. Right. They use the font sizes and the data hierarchy like they do for a reason.
Right.
Copying is one thing. It's like, look at it and understand not just how they do it, but why.
And that's what I was
when you look
say,
at the senior designers, like,
right. So when I say fake it till you make it, no, you're fine. It's like when I say fake it till you make it, it's like you may be starting from zero, but look at how the leaders ahead of you are doing it so that you can take your project that's a very beginner project that you're working on and you can explain it on a professional level. So that way when you're at an interview, you can get like, wow, like I was really impressed with your case study. Like you're brand new, but you explained it in a very high level professional way. And it's like, well, yeah, because I absorbed the case studies and I saw how they explained it. So I'm explaining it in that same high level way, but just with my crap wires since I'm new.
No, I think that's like really good advice. Yeah, there's so many people like they'll just try to like come up with their own crap. There is nothing wrong with copying. I mean, especially when you're new and you don't understand, this is something I don't think a lot of people realize, but when, fine arts schools, like people learn how to paint, they don't go off and paint masterpieces their first week of school. They go and they copy Van Gogh and Mozart. I almost said Mozart. That's not a painter. Like they copy, all these like famous, artists and painters, and they understand like how did they use the brush stroke? Like what brush did they use? Like what was the technique? How much paint did they put on the brush?
Exactly.
Like like those things they learn because they're copying. They're not learning because they're going off and doing something on their own. So yeah, I think that's great advice. A lot of people, I think, will try to go and create something new, and it looks like it. It definitely looks like it.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I've been around long enough to know, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just go in. I'm like, if that's what they're doing, that's what I'm doing, and then just take it from there.
It. I'm with you. All right, cool. I love that. Cool. All right, awesome. So I've got some questions I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. Are you ready? You got some time to answer some of these questions?
I do.
All right.
Let's go.
Up first, what is your favorite non-design book?
My favorite non-design book. I came prepared. So I'm an actor, so it's going to be an acting book. So Acting in Film by Michael Caine.
I love it.
It's a great book. I highly recommend it. It talks about acting on film specifically, because I know sometimes for theater actors, it can be a hard transition to act in film since theater is so big and film is so small. So I like Michael Caine is my favorite actor. I would love to do a project with him. So that's
listening, Michael Caine, if you're listening,
right? If you're listening, it's on my bucket list. Like, would love to work with you. But it's my favorite acting book for sure. So, my favorite non-design book, I should say.
I don't think I realized that. I guess that's totally true about the difference between stage and film, right? Like stage, big giant thing, maybe thousands of people out in the audience, all watching you. It's all live.
Right.
And film, it's like it could be in a tiny little room with 4 or 5 other people, depending on the size of the movie.
Exactly.
And you've got a million takes and everything else. That's got to be like interesting. I guess it's, not surprising that not a lot of people make that transition.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a film actor first and foremost, so I'm used to being much smaller and quieter and more like here with my performance versus like some of my friends who I love them, but they're like all the way over here. They're so loud and so big.
They're like blah, 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 like just all over the place. Like I guess you have to be.
Exactly.
I feel like what's Martin Short or somebody like that seems like a very stage actor on film at least.
Right, exactly.
Live, all right. What is your favorite non-design podcast? Apparently you don't listen to a lot of podcasts. So.
Non-design podcast. I'm going to plug my friend. Her name is Mika. Her podcast is on hiatus, but it's one of my favorites. It's called Talk to Us Nice. And if you want to listen to entertainment, celebrity nonsense, like her and her co-host do a really great podcast. She's going to be like, Stephanie, why'd you mention it? Like, we're on hiatus. I'm like, I don't care. I love it. Promoting it. So check out Talk to Us Nice.
Do they have a set time they're coming back?
I don't know. It's TBD, but the website is up. I think they're still on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so I think you can still listen to the prior seasons and check it out.
Listen to the back catalog. It's all there. That's the beautiful thing about podcasts versus like a radio show. It's there forever until I delete it, I guess. But
yeah.
All right. What is your favorite meal?
Favorite meal?
This could be something you cook, something you've had at a restaurant, something your grandma used to cook.
I'm gonna be a New York basic bitch and say a bacon, egg, and cheese favorite meal ever. I'm a breakfast person, so if I could only eat one breakfast food for life, it would be a bacon, egg, and cheese. It could be on a biscuit, bagel, but all one word: bacon, egg, and cheese.
Bacon and cheese? Any place in particular or homemade?
It depends. Different restaurants will do it differently. So I like trying new restaurants. Like I'll pop into new like mom and pop places or like established places and I'll do it. That depends where you get it from. But also homemade, I mean, I make my own really good one. So I do a good too. So
You make your own biscuits too, or you get
I
like
do. I
you
make
go
my own
all in?
biscuits too, the flour
Homemade
and
biscuits. Ah,
everything.
watch out.
Yes, I learned.
Watch out. That seems like that's not something I would expect a New Yorker to be making biscuits. I'll be honest. I
Right?
feel like that's a very
Listen, boredom
southern Georgia
during
thing
the
or something.
pandemic. That's what happened. My baking hat was put on during the pandemic. I was baking things. I'm like, who taught me how to do this? Why am I making a casserole right now? Like, what am I
That is so
doing?
funny. I started doing. I found this amazing recipe from Bon Appetit for banana bread with
Oh,
mascarpone
nice.
cheese. Holy crap! I made so many freaking loaves of banana bread with mascarpone cheese
Oh,
during the
nice.
pandemic. I was
Yeah, I
like,
made a lot of
my
it in high
neighbors were
school.
like, I don't want to touch your food. Like you might have coat, you know. But I'm just making. I'm like, anybody want some banana bread? I was
I
eating
know
some.
that
I'll
was
put
one of
some
my
chocolate
staples
chips in
too.
them. Ooh,
Banana bread, making a lot of it.
oh my god, making me want to go make some right now. Actually,
Right?
I put like chocolate chips in it, and
Ooh, that's good.
I did one version with walnuts, but I don't think I like the
I didn't
walnuts
like
in
that
it. I
either. I
like
did a walnut version. It was too bitter. I hated it.
yeah, the chocolate chip though. Ooh, that mascarpone cheese, man. I'll tell you,
I
try it
gotta
out.
try that. I gotta try
I'll
that.
send you the recipe.
Okay.
All right, what is your favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation spot. I did a lot of traveling recently, so if you would have asked me this like a year ago, I would have said Canada because I went to Toronto a while back. But recently I went to Colorado and it
Mm,
was gorgeous. So 10/10 recommend Colorado. I'm planning a return trip sometime soon, but I loved Colorado. So
what part?
favorite.
Like the Rockies, like the
Yeah, yeah,
mountains,
yeah. So we
or
stayed in Denver and we drove around and we went
mm,
to Rocky Mountains. We saw a whole bunch of hiking spots. Like we did a lot of the touristy things that you do in that Colorado area between Denver and Boulder. But next time we hope we can go to like Vail and like do more like the train ride. There's like a $1 million waterfall. I think I butchered that name, but there's like 1,000 sightseeing things that I want to go see in Colorado.
yeah, I've been to Colorado once when I was a kid. For some reason, we did a road trip. Like we drove from New Orleans to Colorado. I don't know why we did that. I
Yeah.
remember like it taking forever. I was like probably 12 and I don't know. My whole family, we had like a caravan of like four cars. We all my uncles and aunts and stuff. And I remember it snowed and we like none of us could ski and it was like a whiteout, like you couldn't see anything and it was just like we were just in a cabin for like a week. It was not very fun.
That was us
But
going up to the
anyway,
Rocky Mountains. We were not prepared for the winter that was up there, so we're in our little jackets and like it's freezing, the
yeah.
snow is falling. We're like, why is it snowing?
Yeah, we're like being from New Orleans, like none of us, we had like windbreakers and,
I know.
flip flops probably. Anyway, that was fun times. Fun times. All right. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
These are going to be fighting words, but Canva is my
Canva, watch
favorite
out.
non-design or non-Figma design tool. A lot of people are like to talk smack about Canva, but I will fight you. Canva is it. Tell me what you cannot do in Photoshop that cannot be done in Canva, or I think I butchered that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah.
tell me what you can't do in Canva that cannot. Oh my God, you know exactly what I was trying to say. There, Canva.
I got you. I got you. Tell me what you can't do in Canva that you can do in Photoshop.
There
That's
you
what you're
go.
trying to say.
That the
There
words.
it
My
is.
brain is not braining at this moment, but yes,
This show has that effect on people.
it is.
I've actually never used Canva, to be honest. I feel like I probably should, but I just never have. I don't know.
It
Maybe
just
that's me.
depends.
Maybe
It
that's like a
depends
personal
what
failure.
you want to use it for. I did it a lot for like social media stuff. So I created a lot of content through there for one of my jobs,
Mm.
and then I just kept the subscription and I loved it and I used it for everything. Like you can remove backgrounds, do all types of crazy fun stuff. Canva is it.
Yeah. Can you use it without a subscription? Do you have to? Is it like a free
You
version?
can. There's a free version, but I pay for the subscription because you can get like all the premium features, like remove background image and all that fun stuff. So I like the premium
Yeah.
version of Canva. But yes, you can use the free one. You're just limited to your choices, but you can still do a lot with the free version.
All right. I'll have to check it out. A lot of people have said Canva. Actually, you're not the only one. and it makes me question why I haven't actually popped it open and started trying yet. So
I know I used to get into it with people because I would call myself a graphic designer, and they're like, "Oh, what do you use?" I'm like, "Canva." That's a hot topic
well,
trigger word.
I type in the words and it does it for me, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever works. You know what? At the end of the day, the results. That's what matters.
Results, exactly. So.
All right, Stephanie. Awesome. Well, this was fantastic talking to you today. One more time before we get out of here. Actually, I don't think I asked you this yet, so this will be the first time. Before we get out of here, where can everybody find you? All your socials and your do people say that your socials, is that a
your
thing?
Socials?
Is that a thing? I don't know. I'm getting old. So where can they find you online? All the social media, wherever you're at, all that stuff.
Yeah, you can find this elder millennial on LinkedIn. I am very antisocial, so you can find my Instagram. I'm not posting on there. I have a website for all of my UX things, but it's password protected, so you can't really do much through there. So I say LinkedIn is where you can find this elder lurking millennial.
There you go. I found out recently somebody called me a geriatric millennial, which I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I've got a lot of gray hair in my beard, and I definitely feel like an old man some days, but geriatric millennial, I feel like it was like going a little bit too far. A little too much.
Too far.
Like,
Too much.
Geriatric. Come on. Come on. My dog, he's actually 15.
Oh, nice.
And they called him geriatric when I was at the vet not long ago, because they're like, wow, he's still alive. That's impressive.
You're like, yeah, me too.
And anyway, yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, geriatric. So we're both geriatric. All right, great. Anyway, geriatric dog, geriatric millennial. I guess it fits. All right. Stephanie, this has been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much for coming on. This is fantastic. I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot of stuff from your experience, so thank you.
Hopefully my ramblings were coherent.
They were. That's the beauty of post-production.
Okay.
We'll make them coherent. All right, Stephanie, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.